Welcome back, commissioners. It is great to see you. What an exciting morning. It's great to see you all over at the Capitol. I am eager to hear about the day. So, Matt, do we need to take roll call?
We do need to take roll call.
Okay, let's do it.
And Michelle Andrus.
Present.
Mildred Brown. Summer Harding. Vania Hayes-White.
Here.
Sarah Jocham.
Here.
April Lopez. Christina Mills. Gloria Perez-Stewart. Gina Plate.
Here.
Rodriguez. Kimberly Salmonson.
Here.
Barbara Schulman. Janine Topalian.
Here.
David Toston. Steve Winlock. Mike Infante.
Here.
And just to be said, Kayla was here earlier in the day, so she just left early.
Great, thank you, everybody. So we're going to launch back in for the rest of the afternoon here. We are going to, I'd love to hear about your visits to the Capitol. We're going to hear, and I believe make a motion specific to the Part B grant application from the department. Hear from our state director, Kristin Wright, and then we have general public comment, and we'll talk about our agenda building ideas for our next meeting. So we have touched on a couple of things so far in our meeting, and we will continue that conversation and adjourn at 3 o'clock. So with that, let me launch right into the morning. Tell me about your experience over there, both with your individual meetings with legislators, and then we had the privilege of getting time with folks from the Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor's office. So eager to hear feedback on those meetings. So who wants to start?
Well, we had a nice time visiting Senator Morlock and Senator Chang. Senator Chang is on the Education Committee, and we were able to meet with her, Luigi Luciano, I believe. Quite an Italian name, right? Luigi Luciano is her education policy advisor. So that was a great meeting. We introduced our commission and how we might be able to assist them and gave them the sheet, and I think it was very well received. Senator Morlock's office, we met with Spencer Street, and we met with him last year, so he remembered us, and so it's just a nice outreach to touch base with him again. Havania, did you want to add anything?
It was just nice for them to ask us questions, and we could give them some of our feedback of how we are experiencing ACSE and what we may be experiencing out in the field. So it was just an eye-opening experience and good to share out.
Other folks, Barbara.
Okay, my group was Michelle and Sarah and Janine, and we went to Assemblyman Jesse Gabriel's office and met with Dylan Hoffman, who was very nice, and listened, and we did all that, and we each took parts. Each of us took different parts of the folder so that everybody had a chance to talk. And then we went to Senator Bates' office, and we talked to Sarah Couch, who definitely remembered us from last year. And what I found really lovely about her was that after we gave our talk, she said, I want you to know what education bills we're working on so that you can, so that was really nice. It felt that back and forth. It wasn't just us talking. She talked, so it was lovely. And then the next three were wonderful. I've, never been in the governor's office, so I was like, ooh, I got goosebumps. But it was, they gave us really good information. They really listened. I felt very well respected, and they're willing to work with us and listen to our comments.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yes, David.
So our group visited Dr. Pan's office as well as Kevin Kiley's office, and like everyone else, we had very good conversations, a high level of interest and dialogue. It felt, the meetings for me this year felt a little bit easier because we had the superstar in Mike with us, who was
Nice.
able to share his perspectives and engage in the conversation. And much like the other meetings, the commitment for ongoing conversation and developing the relationship.
Oh, that's great to hear. Good.
You know, I'd like to just add on to that. In our meeting when we met with Representative Kiley, one of the things that we did when we shared the strategic plan of looking at the areas that we would like to focus on, we talked a little bit about what legislation that he is involved in and that we see that is kind of supporting some of ours. And the one that comes up that he talked about was the issue of the Medi-Cal payment for assisting with mental health and support of that area. And we were just kind of, you know, acknowledging that that's one a major thing that is helping us in looking at providing that multi-level of support. And so it was touching upon some of our direction and the things that we're working on. So I thought that was a good alignment to have a discussion around that, because there is a lot of work being done around the issues of special ed, and being able to have those identified and not was good.
Nice. Fantastic. Other thoughts, comments? Yeah.
Just one more thought from our meeting with Tanya, where it just resonated with me when she suggested that we look beyond the special ed bills. And I have been involved with different organizations making the rounds, and the idea of having conversations about general ed proposals to say, okay, let's talk about how this is inclusive or how it's not, is something that we probably, all the special ed advocacy groups need to consider, because the message that we're sharing is inclusion, one system working together. But when bill season starts, you know, my experience is we focus solely on the special ed bills, and so broadening that horizon to look for opportunities to achieve the same goals.
That's a really great point. So let me ask you, as we think about the advisory commission's experience doing the Capitol visit, do you have suggestions for how we might want to do it similarly, differently next year? Any thoughts, suggestions? I know we talked yesterday about having a separate discussion at our June meeting about the role of the Advisory Commission as it pertains specifically to advocacy versus advisory, and how do we differentiate those two things so that you don't feel like you're in a position of having to weigh in on a specific piece of legislation, but you are part of the policy process. So any thoughts, suggestions around that? Summer.
So we also had meetings with both the Assembly and the Senate Education Committee groups, and in the governor's office as well. I don't know if everyone else felt the same. I heard clearly from all three groups how much they would love to have relationships with us.
Nice.
That seemed very obvious. The timing was really critical to them. Everybody seemed to always reference the fall. So I think it should be certainly on our agenda to be reaching out and forming those bonds with them, because they seemed very receptive to what we know from people working in the field. And it's just timing's critical.
Nice. Glad to hear that. So maybe there's a discussion following our June meeting that talks about what the role of the Ledge Committee is in developing those relationships ongoing and staying connected. Good. Other thoughts, suggestions about the visits, suggestions for changing, doing the same? Yes, David.
One suggestion might be, I think it was Tanya who said maybe the best time for us until we further define our role is to have the conversations in the fall as bills and ideas are being considered and developed, as opposed to, you know, peak time where we might have some limitations about weighing in on specific bills.
Good suggestion. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Thanks. You know, I was just thinking about one of the things that I kept picking up. They wanted to know what were the issues that we were dealing with, or what kinds of things were we focused on. Mm-hmm. That would help them in kind of looking at where they could be assistance in or bring into it. And I was wondering about, do we send to them our agenda for each of the ones? Do they go directly to those offices or to those? I know it's posted and it's a part. Maybe we need to maybe look at and sending, this is what we're going to be dealing with each time.
Yeah.
So.
Good idea. Thank you.
And then, so normally Tanya Lieberman gets our whole packet of information. Yeah, she requested that we provide that to her. Obviously, I wasn't able to get over there the day before since my leg was hurt.
Don't worry.
And I believe I have to go check, but when the emails or when the agenda is posted and we forward out to all of you the agenda, we have other groups that have a larger list of people that watch ACSE that are here. And I think they might be on that list. I have to check.
Yeah,
So.
great. Yeah, no problem. Other questions, comments? Yes, Michelle.
I think I would prefer a little bit smaller groups if we go around. It felt like there was 4 of us, I think. It just felt a lot in those really small offices. And maybe it'd be a little bit more focused to have pairs. And we could also divide and conquer a little bit better that way. And then also after maybe some establishment of relationship, there could be a couple of designated people who just have a brief meeting each time we're up here, that just 1 or 2 people go over to meet with a key person just to touch base, and they can come back to us. That way the relationship is more ongoing. It's impossible to have a relationship with all of us. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Kimberly, did you have?
It was along the same lines. I was just thinking about how we could be a little more targeted. And if we had time built in, if we had pairs that we knew were going to go and make those visits, if maybe they were following a bill or they were following something or they were talking about a specific pillar, and we made sure that each of those pillars was talked about in depth. It just might lend a little more coherence to that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
A little more targeted, a little more deliberate.
Yeah.
But
good
they were
idea.
very receptive. I appreciated their conversations. I appreciated their questions.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we need to be a real voice around education legislation.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tend to make the connection all the time to. In fact, I think one of the comments was, oh, I don't think we have any special education legislation right now. And I said, well, how about just education bills? Oh, we have several of those. Right. So I think we still have to just really be kind of honing in on making that connection always in our conversations.
Right. That's a great suggestion. And then it goes back to the discussion about our timeline. So if we're thinking about honing our message in the June and August meeting, so potentially taking a visit at the fall meeting. Yeah, it's.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
How do we remedy the idea, the concept that we are here in October, but we do not get together again until February? I know we keep going back to that, and I know we get tired through the year, but then when we come into this ledge visit, it's always the same conversation about if you could get back to us between if you could come to us in the fall, but then we don't get back to them until it's too late. In the spring. We don't come back together to discuss until really it's too far down the road.
Yeah.
Is there any way to remedy that within?
This has been an ongoing challenge.
I know it has.
So it's looked all different ways. And what's happened in the past is then people have said, well, it's hard during the holidays because, so you guys just have to decide. This is your committee. So you have to make a commitment, but if we're going to have a meeting in between, people, need to commit to come. And that's been a problem in the past, which is why it changes, because during those months, there wasn't even a quorum sometimes. So happy to do whatever. And I will also just mention that you may want to consider, I understand that you want to have, these relationships with legislators, but your purview on the board is to also be available to the public. And so you don't want to spend a whole bunch of your time when you are here meeting with people across the street necessarily, because you're here to hear the public and to do things in public. And so you may want to consider maybe once a year coming a half a day early and doing visits the day before or something like that. And then I'd also highly recommend that you build relationships with your own legislator. You're their constituent and you offer them a high level of expertise. And so going back to your own district, you can meet with your own legislator in your district and be that conduit for them, so when they come up here during the year, they already know you and they're going to call you.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Janine, did you want to make a comment? Yeah, of course.
You know, meeting with them in our local area because
You're their constituents. So the line you have to be careful of is you're not there saying the whole commission thinks this, unless it's something you guys have all agreed on. But you all come from various other stakeholder groups that you represent in your own associations. So you may have, whatever that is, but you still get to be people. It's just how you address yourselves. You're not just always a commissioner every minute. You're a constituent first when you're back there, and you wear lots of hats.
All right. Yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
And we just need to make sure that when we plan our meetings, and I was guilty and didn't have the time this time, that they don't overlap, because we missed a lot of time. I felt badly that our group walked in, but we couldn't cut off the lovely woman who was speaking to us and telling her point of view. So I think we have to, not cut it quite so close.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we had the luxury of time because it's recess. And so you're right. That's an important consideration, and love that they offered it.
We were meeting at 10 o'clock with Matt, and yet we were first meeting with people at 10, and she wasn't finished with us till 10:25.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Any last comments, thoughts, suggestions as we consider our next ledge outing? Yes, Havania.
I just want to piggyback on Kimberly's comment to have us really take some time to really consider, do we want to add a meeting or not during that time that we are like 2-3 months away? Is it 2-3 months away?
Yes. So, yeah, we cannot. So Matt, you want to tell us about limitations on location for adding a meeting at this point in the year?
We just have, if you want to use this boardroom is booked up at least 2 years in advance. So there may not be availability. The reasons that your meetings are scheduled somewhat like they are is because they're right before the state board meeting. And then if you're going to give advice on something that's current, then the idea was that you'd be able to give information to the board. So that's another consideration you want to make, is if there's something that's coming up, you want to have them strategic. So whether there's something else during the year, we can look at that. And then between November and February, it just may not be here.
So why don't we put it back? Why don't we put it to our operations and planning discussion for next time, to look at the calendar and have that group?
And we'll queue up with some information to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be, if there's a specific issue, we could come for a day maybe, or, it depends on, it might not be Wednesday, Thursday, it might not be, it just depends. Yeah, we'll look into it.
We'll give you options. Okay.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for raising it, Havania. Okay, moving on then. We are at item number, thank you, 18. That was a test. No, just kidding. So I would like to, this is the opportunity for us to hear about the department's Part B application. And so I'd like to welcome Heather Carlson to the podium. Welcome, Heather.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Sounds like you had a nice, fun ledge day, packed full. So as Gina mentioned, I'm just here to talk to you about our Part B application. This is part of an annual presentation that we do. Going into each federal fiscal year, we apply for our IDEA grant, just like every other state, and we bring it to you to kind of let you know that we're submitting our application and the sections that we go through. There's also public comment period too. So we use this as an opportunity to kind of let folks know what's going on and give them a chance to kind of weigh in if they feel like they want to. So the first section, and do I need to change this? Or? Hit the left button, just like the arrow. Technology. So basically the purpose of the application is that in order for us to receive our Part B 611 IDEA grant, we have to submit excuse me, an application. The application is basically a list of assurances around our policies, our statutes, our regulations that basically say that we intend to be consistent with the federal statutes here in California. So our application, that's basically steps 1 through 4, is, is due to the federal government on May 17th. For our 1920. So it's federal fiscal year 2019, which in our state would be our 1920 fiscal year. We complete this preliminary application every year, and then prior to submission, we actually post it publicly for 60 days so that the public has opportunity to weigh in and provide comments. So that it's available for 60 days public, and then the last 30 days we open it up to public comment. We have a specific email address that folks can write into if they've got concerns or issues or want to ask questions. And so for the 1920 grant, that will be March 29th through April 30th. So we're almost to the end of our comment period. So the first section of the 4 sections of our application is basically just a submission. And it's basically our submission statement saying we agree and abide by all of the provisions in IDEA, and we assure that we're meeting all of those things. Unfortunately, here in California, we do have to say that we mostly agree because one of the provisions is that we have fully trained and licensed teachers in every single one of our classrooms. And we all know that with a teacher shortage in California, sometimes that means teachers on emergency credentials. And so we basically say that we work towards having all of our classes taught by fully credentialed teacher every year, and we aim to do that, but we are a large state, and we do know that our special educators are high commodity. So, and the second set is basically just the assurances, and the list of assurances are all of those things that are outlined in IDEA. So it's basically saying we have policies and procedures that ensure FAPE, that we do child find. So all of the tenets of IDEA are kind of covered, and we assure that we meet all of those assurances. And then section 3 is our use of funds. So this section is basically an interactive web page, but it's a spreadsheet that we basically go in and say, how do we use our administrative and state level activities money? So of course, administration is mostly used in the special ed division. We do all of the monitoring, all of the grants, all of those things. But we also do state level activities, things like there's $69 million that goes out for mental health. There are the family empowerment centers. So those are all things that we also list out, basically saying this is how we use our state level activity funding. And if I'm going too fast or you have questions, just stop me. So
Heather, I do have a question. Just as you're going through it, are you going to be asking us for a motion to approve this at the end, or are we at that point in the cycle that you need that from us?
I think basically what we're doing is just another public forum to kind of put it out there.
Great.
So you guys don't have to take any official action, but it's really one more way that we can kind of get ourselves out there in the public and say, hey, this is out there. We want your feedback.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
So basically the use of funds, we also kind of, this is kind of a non-exhaustive list of various stakeholders that we engage throughout the year when we're trying to decide how best to use the funds that were provided via IDEA and to ensure that they're used in the best and most efficient way to ensure students are getting all of the supports and services that they need. So this is just a list and you're on there. So the final section is the state rules. So this is actually a section of the application where we as a state have to present anything in our state law or regulation that exceeds IDEA. So anything that we as a state feel is important, like RSP caseload, those are things that are individual to the state of California, but we have to report to the feds and say, here is something that we're doing that's not necessarily a requirement of IDEA, but our state feels is important. So we have a list. So I've gone through each of these sections. All of these things are on our website. So you can go through, you can see the interactive spreadsheet, you can see all of the sections of code that we have that exceed IDEA. You can see any of our assurances. So those are all public, and we've provided you the link in the handout, but we can certainly give it to Matt if you want to do more digging. And then basically the last section, section 5, is our maintenance of financial support. So unlike other federal grants, IDEA actually requires 2 levels of support. It requires a maintenance of financial support, which is basically a state commitment that we intend to maintain the level of funding for students with disabilities as we did the previous year, at or above. And there's a local MOE where each LEA is required to maintain the same thing. They have different parameters and requirements, but in essence, they're both the same thing. So that's about it. This is like the quickest update of your life. It is. It seems, well, I will tell you that if you print it all out, it's much larger than my 2-minute presentation and much more thorough. But I know when I start talking about finances, sometimes people's eyes glaze over and they just get like, what? So I won't belabor you with any more details, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer anything. And as always, we appreciate you allowing us to use you as a stakeholder and be able to present in this forum. Any questions?
Yes, Sarah, thank you.
Heather, were there any big changes this year from previous applications that that you think should be noted or that we should be aware of?
Not for the 19 application. We have in the past had other areas, and Kristin can probably speak more to this, and perhaps she may want to address it during her director's update, that we actually, in the list of assurances, we were actually able to remove one that we weren't meeting, which was around science assessments. So we actually moved over in a category, so now we're just down to, if we can just get, a bazillion more teachers, will be great. Any other questions?
Other questions, commissioners? We definitely appreciate the opportunity to hear the work that the department's doing and an update on the application components. So thank you for coming down.
Of course.
Anything? So there's no action you need from us at this point?
At this point, the information is in your slide. There's a Part B app at cde.ca.gov.
Oh, nice.
That's where anyone can provide public comment until the 30th of April. So we encourage any comments, feedback, questions. We're happy to get back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, commissioners, we are moving on to item number 19. This is our State Special Ed Director report from Kristin Wright, who is our State Director and also our Executive Secretary. So let me hand it over to you.
I'm not recording. I'm being recorded though. Yes. Thank you, commissioners. I first wanted to comment on just how impressed I was with the conversations and the richness and depth of conversations that you just had across the street. The kinds of things that you shared with our staff are so meaningful, just from my perspective, I won't speak for them, in terms of being able, it allows them to be able to use those same stories and anecdotes when they're going to talk to other folks, because they're hearing directly from you. I thought it was really powerful. And so just thank you for all that. You made us all look so good as a commission. And secondly, a special thanks to Matt for all the work that he does to try to put this party on. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that have to happen in order for this to occur. And so, and then third, a shout out to Heather Carlson for being the steady here. I'm all over the place and all over the state, and she really, holds down the fort along with 150 others of our incredible staff. And I just wanted to give you a brief kind of update, like what are they doing up there and out in the field? Some of you have seen them out in the field because this is the time of year where they're doing reviews. And so we have many of our consultants out doing comprehensive reviews in districts, so working with districts over periods of time, looking at IEPs and talking to districts and walking them through their data. We spend a lot of time on the front end, and I don't know if you remember talking to them when you were upstairs about sort of the work they were doing when they were planning on going out. So first they look at all the data and really try to see what they should be targeting when they go out to look at LEAs. So they're out there doing that right now. Our other units, our performance indicator review units, are doing the same. They've been doing a lot of training across the state this year because of the changes in some of how we're looking at LEAs. So we're looking at every single charter school as its own LEA. We have a lot more schools that we brought in for monitoring. And so they've been out working with individual schools and districts and county offices around our performance indicators. And I know some of you have probably been involved in some of those activities. And over the summer, all of our units will be looking at their processes and what went well this year and what we need to improve on for next year and what we can do to make things better. We have an amazing staff who really care about this work and who are really interested in having this be meaningful for districts and schools. And so big kudos to them. They've been working really hard. They've all been out in the field and away from their families for many weeks now. We also have some changes here at the CDE. So as you know, we have a new superintendent and a new chief deputy. And the special ed division is in the teaching and learning branch under a new deputy, and her name is Catalina Cifuentes, and I'm hoping she'll be able to come down and say hi to you at some point in the next few hours. A couple other things that I wanted to mention, she's just texting me, is that while we do monitoring, as you know, we also do provide technical assistance, and we have some of our signature projects that we work with. One of them is the Supporting Inclusive Practices project that started out of one county office and now has changed to be statewide across the state with 3 directors. And looking next year, we're scaling that project because it's gotten a lot of great return on investment. I went and spoke to some of the folks. We had 43 local educational agencies meet at the University of Redlands last week, all committed to creating those bright spots in the state for more inclusion of our students with disabilities. And so it was really awe-inspiring to see this happening in real time. I know you've all been talking about it. I've heard over the last few days the commitment level that you all have to that cause and that equity for students with disabilities. So we're also trying to support that across the state. And we realize from working with districts too that they really want the how, and everyone is so committed to making sure this happens. And the how is a little harder than the why and what. Although I think someone said earlier that part of the challenge is still the change in mindset and the culture and climate that has to be created in order for this to occur. Let's see. A couple other things to mention. It was great to sit a few weeks ago on a panel at CSU at Sac State that where there were, I think, like 70 incoming teachers who were in their last class around disability, and some of them were general ed teachers, and some of them were going to be general ed teachers, and some were going to be special ed teachers, and some were getting a dual credential. But it's just the questions that they have give me like a great deal of hope. And I've seen over time that the questions have evolved. I would say they're not if questions, they're how questions. And so I have a lot of hope for our next generation that they won't have sort of some of the same rigid guardrails that we have in place from ours. I also had the opportunity to talk with many of our teacher preparation programs at the CCTE, which is, I don't even know what that stands for. I'm sorry, I'm using an acronym, but it's higher ed. Vicki Graff will kill me for not knowing that. But it was a policy summit where I subbed in for Kristin Olmstead around multi-tier system support, as well as talked about sort of what the big dream is for students with disabilities, all things that I got from you all over the last year. So thank you for all of your words and your stories. And our superintendent, I accompanied our superintendent on Monday to the Breaking Barriers Symposium, where he spoke and energized everyone with an ongoing commitment to behavioral health, school-based behavioral health, and really working in concert with our policymakers and the governor and others around really making this happen for our schools. I heard that a lot today from you all as well. So just so you know, we have a strong advocate in him and in our deputies to really make this happen. Our superintendent is also sponsoring some bills. I'll just name one particular one that you might want to look at, and that is AB 1172. That's a Fraser bill. That's around non-public schools and putting some additional guardrails in place around monitoring and reporting around behavioral things. So take a look at that and let us know what you think. AB 1172. I also wanted to give a special shout out to Mike. I think that it's so critical that as we're talking about these things, that we're keeping in mind our students. And so thank you for being here with us and for sharing your thoughts and reminding us exactly why we're doing this work. I mean, we get so into policy, but it's really about the students and the kids that we serve. That's why we're all here. So he did a great job. He did an absolutely great job. I also heard today about administrator preparation and paraprofessional training. There continues to be a huge statewide commitment to that. I'm excited to see how things begin to roll out with the teacher residency. I would love to see us really do more around the paraprofessional training as well. We've been having conversations about that, and also getting that teacher pipeline. Yeah. And so thank you for bringing that up as something and I think we would all agree that for our teachers, it's at the core of how we will address the needs of our students. And so whatever we can do to provide teachers and paraeducators with more training, and not just special ed teachers, but all teachers, and the administrator piece, which you all echoed so well this morning around how critical that principal role is. And summer gives us a great bar to head to try to achieve around how we really serve all students. One of the jobs that we have here at the department, and particularly under IDEA, and that really dovetails with your role on the commission, is for us to make sure that we are constantly letting the field know what and how to interpret the law. So at the very basic fundamentals around what we're all doing here is to make sure that people understand not just what it says, but what the spirit of it is. I hope you've all looked at the last edge and that's helpful in terms of just giving some basics, both to teachers and parents and families. We've gotten some good feedback around that. So thanks to Mary Grady for her great work on that. I know Nikki is gone now, but our relationship with the state board is really critical, and Layla's role as liaison has been really instrumental in making sure that we're really talking to each other across all the different policy-making boards so that we can all have that momentum together, that we're all using similar words and ideologies to move this work forward. So kudos to them, and Nikki's been a great advocate, and I don't know if you have a chance to watch the board ever, but she is always singing your praises every time she gives a report. When she's sitting over there with her iPad, she is taking down the things that you say, and she is repeating them back to the board word for word. So she really does take her role very seriously as a board member. So you guys have been really lucky to have such a good advocate. I also had the opportunity to do a keynote at the Speech and Language Pathologist Conference and talk to 1,000 speech therapists, which was really cool. They were in Pasadena all together. I think there were some audiologists as well and some slip buzz. I don't know what that stands for, Barbara, but it's about speech pathologists. Assistants, yes. And I just wanted to highlight that the purpose and title and crux of what I talked about was that they are really the key to access for our students with disabilities. And so I wanted to give a shout out to those folks who, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I feel like when they're at IEP meetings for even kids who are nonverbal, they provide that acknowledgement that that child can learn, that child is smart, and make sure that communicative competence piece is in place around the access piece, around literacy and everything else. So I know they've been a really crucial role in my own journey, and I'm sure many of yours as well. And I'm sure there's a million other things that we could talk about, but I just want to say thank you for continuing this work and helping it be so enjoyable. And we really do count on you to norm our thinking and provide the context that we keep doing this work. You know, we're only as good as what we know that's happening, the real things that are happening out there. And I think you guys all come with really unique and powerful lenses to do the work. So thank you for that, and that's my report.
Commissioners, thank you, Kristin, for your leadership. Let me open it up first to questions or comments from commissioners for our state director.
You can ask me offline too.
No pressure. Let me just say that that coming together 4 or 5 times a year is, you know, it's hard for some to know where is our place, and how do we inform, and how do we advise, and how do we do a good job living up to the expectations on us. And the partnership with your department, with your leadership, with Matt, with Heather, with all the, I won't list because then I'll forget somebody, but with all the folks in your department that are actively involved with the work of the commission, it puts this commission in a solid footing in the conversation statewide. And so just want to thank you for your leadership, your commitment to inclusion, not just inclusion of students in their schools and in their communities, but inclusion of all the various stakeholder groups that weigh into the work that we're all passionate about, right? Whether or not we all agree on different aspects of the work, you have to agree that we are all very passionate about the work. And the culture you've created within the department respects everybody, and there's a place and a voice for everybody. So thank you for that. One of the things too that stood out to me in your comments was your commitment to equity for students with disabilities, and it piggybacks on what David said from one of the meetings you had this morning, that equity for students with disabilities means that we are all well-versed and articulate in all of the issues specific to general ed. And how do we, as commissioners here on the Advisory Commission for Special Ed, stay articulate and versed in all of the issues? And so I think it's a great reminder that our agendas should be built with the entire continuum of options in mind, so that we are a resource on how to include students. What does that look like? Not just special ed, separate and in our own silo. So that was a great reminder to be thinking about that. And then would love the opportunity to welcome our Deputy Cifuentes if she has the opportunity to come down. All right. With that, let me open it up. Any questions or comments? I'll give you a moment to think. And then we will, while you're thinking, prepare for general public comment. And great, looks like we have some commenters. And now that you've had time to think, Barbara? Okay.
As you all know, I'm not a real touchy-feely person, but a mother sent this to me today, and I'd like to read it to you. The day my child, and if I cry, I'm sorry. The day my child was born, I became a parent. The day they were diagnosed, I became an honorary nurse, teacher, physical and occupational therapist, crisis manager. I became a fierce advocate and my fighter's voice. I learned more medical jargon in the first few months than I did watching every season of my favorite medical drama. I learned to clutch onto hope and dream big, and I learned that anything is possible. I was prepared to help my child grow into a strong and passionate person, but turns out that's what they helped me become. as we said, it's about the kids and what we do for them and what they do. And a mother sent this to me because she said, oh, Barbara, this is your kind of thing. And I just wanted to share it with you.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's open it up to item number 20, which is our general public comment. Thank you, Janine, for being our runner. All right, while those are coming around, Matt, would you like to call our first commenter?
Absolutely.
Great.
First up is Raylene Dickinson, Parents Advocating Together.
What?
The right side.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
This is Wyatt. This is the reason that we're here. We're trying to teach our kids how to advocate for themselves and for you guys to get an idea of our kids so that you have faces to put with the stories that we've told you and stuff. We went to the Capitol today and we were walking around just like you guys were and meeting with everyone from the Education Committee and thoroughly enjoyed that. We met some very nice people who were very interested in what we were saying, and that was good. But, you know, we still need the personal stories of our kids, so.
What, do you miss going to Fletcher? Do you
Yes.
miss your friends?
Yes. Fletcher Elementary.
And do you love the school you go to now?
It's just now, it's good.
Banyan Tree?
Yeah. I live Banyan Tree School today. I have Banyan Tree shirts for kids.
They just started giving shirts out at the school.
Kayla.
Oh, nice.
Very excited.
I have
Nice.
Sophia. I have Max.
Okay.
And
The thing is, you know, in his non-public school, there's only less than 40 kids. There's 6 kids in his classroom, 1 teacher, 3 instructors. He loves that, but he does miss all the typical peers he had because they were such great role models for him. And actually, they miss him. When we go out, you know, at the non-public school, everybody's coming from all different areas. So there's no one really close so that you can do your play dates and meetups with. The others, when he was in public school, he was invited to birthday parties. He totally enjoyed that. They came to his birthday parties, and it was fun. He enjoyed that. And I think, you know, at some point, some of these might be future employers, and they're going to have people with disabilities, and they understand. They were the ones who did great at his school at inclusion. They knew how to get him to work with them. They invited him out to play basketball. It's the mindset of the school, the district, that these kids aren't worth anything, and they are. He's given them so much. When we left Fletcher Elementary on the last day, everybody's known Wyatt for 2 years there. They know his favorite song was Happy Birthday. So before we walked off campus, all the friends surrounded him and they sang Happy Birthday. And it was heartbreaking to know that that was it. We weren't going to get that kind of inclusion for him anymore because now there's no typical peers in his classroom. But he's learned a lot from them. It's made him more outgoing. And that's what we wanted. We have also changed a few minds of some of the kids in his classroom who were very mean to him at the beginning. But they learned, and they ended up being some of his best friends at the end. But they would do anything for him. So we just wanted you guys to hear that part of the story. What do we say? Tell him goodbye.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wyatt.
And next we have Melissa Gardner and Noah Gardner, Parents Advocating Together.
Bye, Mom. I'm sorry.
Come here, it's okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is my son, Noah. Can you say hi?
Hi.
We have been through quite the journey. When we were at the neighborhood school, he developed post-traumatic stress from that experience. What did the teachers do?
They were trying to hurt me.
What do you mean?
They were trying to just be mean and not being friendly.
They weren't being friendly? And what did you think of the school overall?
It was Sierra.
No, the neighborhood one by our house.
Yeah, terrible.
Terrible. And what do you think of Sierra, where you go now? What do you like about it? What do you like about Sierra?
The friends is nice, Nico's not. My friends are not too bossy or mean to me.
And what else? Do they do cooking? What do you like about that?
Because we get to eat what we cook.
You get to eat what you cook? And are you learning a lot? Do you know how much your reading levels have changed? He has improved so much academically there. He's gone up 8 reading levels. And first quarter there, he met 10 out of 13 goals. In this third quarter, he met 9 out of 14 goals, which I have to say is the most he has ever met in our history with San Diego Unified School District. But there is one thing I would like to point out. We are a military family, and they are, during the mediation process, they are giving settlements where the district is absolving any responsibility of the IEP. So currently at this moment, if me and my family were to have to up and move to a different state, we would leave without an IEP because the district completely absolved it in the mediation settlement process. So currently he has no San Diego Unified District IEP that he could take with us to the transition to our next school, whatever state that could be.
And I'm famous at Sierra.
And why are you famous at Sierra?
I forgot.
What did you get to be on?
The newspaper.
You were in their brochure. So if you go to Sierra Academy's website and look at their special education brochure, you'll see a picture of him. So as a military family and them not taking away his IEP and releasing themselves of all of their responsibility to him with needing the services, it's terrifying and horrifying that the districts can get away with this and leave him with no IEP when he qualifies for such services. Thank you. Can you say bye?
Bye.
Thank you, Noah.
Next up, we have Isabella Tui, student, San Diego Unified School District.
Okay. I like Sierra Academy because they give me lots of care and they don't give up on kids learning. I also have friends and people that are nice and care about me. Whenever you need something, they'll get it for you. Okay. The reason
read what you wrote.
And then I hate Dingman because I got bullied and had no friends, and I got bullied by my principal and kids and adults. The only person that cared about me was the vice principal, Mr. Burrow. I was bitten and chased by one of my bullies named Samantha, and she bruised my skin and like it like
It's okay, they got it.
yeah. They made fun of my handwriting when I couldn't help my handwriting, bad handwriting, because I had seizures. Yeah.
So when Izzy was at Dingman, we would spend hours and hours of trying to just get through some of the homework, which she was nowhere on the level where they had her. Since she's been in at Sierra, I pick her up from school, she gets in the car, she starts on her homework herself. And if she's having a hard time with it and I say, let me help you, she goes, no, Mama, I need to talk to my teachers because they know how to explain it to me. And she has learned to self-advocate for herself and let them know when, hey, I don't understand what you're showing me. Can you show me something else? But she has come miles from where she was. And I told her that she needed to do this because we didn't want to see it happen to anybody else. We didn't want to see what she went through, anybody else to go through it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabella.
The next speaker's associated with the packets that you got, just so you know. And that is Dayon Higgins, Parents Advocating Together.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you. These are some really hard stories to follow. I had tears back there too. I want to share some numbers with you. Last year, we had, through our fourth quarter report, noted that we had over 4,852 due process complaints filed, with 1,546 of them settled in mediation, 205 cases settled at resolution sessions. My concern is knowing what they're doing with resolving school districts' obligations of serving children and providing them with individual education programs through settlement. How many of these kids have been deprived their educational rights to services and supports through settlement agreements? To me, it's very frightening that school districts are allowed this practice of taking away these supports. You know, on the other side, when we look at it, who does it injure? It injures the kids, the children. It makes it really, really difficult for the receiving new IEP team or individual, team that's going to support this child. Where do we get the present levels? What is the spirit of the law when we take away their individual education program? Right now, IDEA allows us to revoke services and supports as parents in writing, but I don't see anything in education code or federal code that says that school districts have the ability to absolve their rights and obligations to protect these children by serving them with services and supports. By the time us parents get to the point of due process, they're pretty desperate. In Noah's case, we were literally told by the administrative law judge that he doesn't decide on, so if we went to trial, they don't decide on placement. Yet this was the only placement this child's ever made progress in. The scary part is, part of the settlement is he goes back to the same program that was offered in kindergarten, the same program that created trauma, that he still has nightmares of. And how can we, as myself as an advocate that really cares about my families and kids, they become part of my life. How do I ethically put this child back in the same environment that caused him to be hospitalized for a month? When does the school district start looking at the needs of the child? You know, I'm asking you as commissioners, as you're speaking to legislative members, maybe we need to come up with language that's very clear and strong, that states that we can't relieve your obligation in settlement, you know, especially when a parent is under so much stress. I mean, here's what it says. Well, by students, parent is placed privately, district is absolved from providing an IEP or any other obligation under IDA. How can a piece of paper take away this child's rights and entitlements to supports and services? So please, I ask you to put it on your future agenda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, any additional public comment, Matt? No, thank you. Okay, really appreciate the opportunity to hear from kids directly. It's always nice to have their voice in our meeting. Okay, item number 21. We are moving on to our last agenda item, commissioners. This is our opportunity to make suggestions for what we will have at our June meeting. We do have some carryovers. The items that we try to put on every meeting are the accountability update, the assessment update. We have our committees, our mental health, our ledge, and our policy committees. If you'll think about a potential agenda for the June meeting and give that to Matt, that would be great. We have Mildred, who has already secured speakers for our June meeting on the items that were suggested yesterday. So thank you for that, Mildred. We'll make sure Matt is updated on that. And so what other items would you like to see us fit into future meeting, Vanya?
You were telling us about having several options for looking at an additional meeting.
Sure. Yes. So yeah. So Matt and Kristin and the folks from the department can look at what some options might be for adding a meeting in the fall, and bring that back for our consideration. Yes, Janine.
At our February meeting, we discussed something about the medically fragile, the sheet of paper for chronic absenteeism. If we could revisit that and just follow up on where that is in the process, because I know we were going to discuss that further.
Thank you for that reminder. If that, I believe that was on the there was an indicator. Medically fragile was being defined.
It was a proposal, I think, that they were, it was a proposal that they were considering, and yeah.
I think that's a great idea. It was Jenny, that's right. So I will look back at that handout, and then I think we identified the home hospital, including home hospital as a potential part of that definition as well. So great, thank you for raising that. Other items?
The issue around the shortage of special ed teacher and personnel, is there any way that we can get any projections about what that's going to be or what we're looking at as far as the shortage of special ed teachers, or the issue about what we're doing around that, what the CTC is doing, or what what the universities are doing in teacher prep? It'd be great to get some understanding of that concept, because that's a huge issue that's going to be addressing the delivery of special ed.
That's actually a great suggestion. We were just talking about potential presenters who would be good for that. So thank you for that. Yes, David, and then back to Janine.
Two ideas. One, it'd be interesting to hear again about the MTSS work that Orange and Butte have been doing. I know some schools have already gone through like the first cohort 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So just hearing a story or understanding how that work is impacting the field. And in conjunction with that, potentially maybe hearing some of the plans that the content leads have around special ed next year.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you, David. Okay, Janine, yes.
I believe the Pupil Personnel Services credential was updated recently as well, so if somebody could come and let us know more about that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And the goal award would be occurring.
Yeah, the goal award. Perfect. Thank you.
I'd love some information on our SLIPA trainings and how those institutions are contracting through county offices and how counties have access to SLIPAs and those who do not, as far as the MOEs that they have with which counties and which ones they do not, which allow for them to have internships in school districts in those counties or not. So it'd be interesting to know how that process works.
Great. Mm-hmm. Access to contracts. Some do not. Perfect. Thank you for that. Yes.
If I'd love to bring forward maybe a conversation we can have about an alternate diploma option, alternate diploma pathway, if you're interested in that.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Yes. So yesterday we had a presentation from the department around district of residence and where the responsibility versus service lies. And so it seems like that generated quite a bit of discussion. So love to bring that back to our next meeting as well. Any other items?
I think you've pretty much filled it, don't you think?
So if you could reserve the week, right? Yeah. So yes, so I noticed that Deputy Superintendent Catalina Cifuentes came in the room. So Kristin, would you do the honors of introducing our new
Sure,
deputy?
I'd love to have Catalina just come up for just a minute and say hello. This is our newest addition to our CDE leadership team. This is Catalina Cifuentes. I'm very excited that she is currently serving as our Deputy Superintendent over Teaching and Learning branch, which is the branch that special education resides in. And she is an incredible support to us here, both at the commission and for special education as a whole. I'll let her tell you just a little bit about her background, so you know she comes from, and I think we're really lucky to have her here.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for your commitment to our students in California. And on behalf of our superintendent, I'm just honored to be here and to represent the organization. And so many exciting things happening in CDE, and I love when someone asks for update on the PPS credential standards, because I was actually on the committee to do that. So I was a former teacher for over 10 years, school counselor, administrator, worked at a county office. So I definitely had a lot of hats. So I'm an actual practitioner that's now had the amazing opportunity to come and represent 6 million students. And so I'm originally from Riverside County. And when this opportunity came, it was leave my home, my family, what I know, but then it was that little bit of hope that 6 million students, Catalina, if we could do one or two great things. So I couldn't say no. So I'm excited to be here. And you have an amazing advocate here and partner. And one thing Kristin and I share is, of course, loyalty and ownership to the success of our students. So it's kind of, we have that same, we truly own the success and failures of our students. And so she's an amazing advocate on behalf of all students, all our special education students. So I'd be excited to contact someone to present on the new PPS credential standards. We spent a lot of time working on them. It had been over 17 years since they'd been updated. As a school counselor myself, they were very driven towards, for example, there was not one standard that discussed college and career readiness. So not one standard in the past credentials. So we were wondering, why weren't these school counselors knew how to help students get into post-secondary, let alone our special education students. So it needed a lot of updates. So we spent a lot of time working together on that. So I'm excited definitely to bring someone forward to kind of share more information, and I can also help if you have any questions. But just on behalf of the Department of Ed, thank you so much, and I look forward to working with all of you. And I can't say enough thank you for your commitment, and we've already been sharing some creative ideas for our special education students. Looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Deputy Superintendent, if I could just say, that in the time that you've been here, it's been very clear in all of the different venues that I've heard you speak or read something about you talking that you put students first. And so your comments are always driven by what's most important to the students that you are serving in this role at the department. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think as an agency, and definitely, part of the decision of coming to CD was you wanted to have a worthy leader that believed in those same qualities of students, and we could make change. And Superintendent Thurman and our Chief Deputy Cortez Alcala, they were the deciding factor. I think we can do some great things in California. So definitely students first. That's my go-to. The decisions are tough and they're not easy, but student-centered 100%.
Nice. Thank you for that. Okay, commissioners, we have reached the conclusion of our action-packed agenda. I want to thank you for your time, your energy, your commitment to the work that we are doing. And like I said, we all come from different places in our day-to-day work, and the opportunity to bring our brains together and grapple with some of the issues facing students with disabilities across our state is just an incredible honor. So you are a talented, extraordinary, articulate group of people that I feel very honored to serve alongside. So with that, thank you for your time, engagement, and Matt, always the last word, please.
Yeah, I just can't help myself. If just anyone who hasn't turned in their nominations form on their way out, please do that.
Excellent, thank you. All right, with that, we are adjourned, and we will see you back here again in June.